everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited to talk about Walmart's new OTIF program with our lovely Q&A panelists. And we just wanted to start out to thank Supplier Community for having us and for hosting us and allowing us to share this awesome content. I know that there's a lot more that Supplier Community is doing that's up and coming with their Supplier Community Connect groups. So you guys should definitely check those out. There's about 3 different ones on supply chain, e-commerce, and shopper marketing, which is their first one. So go to their website to check that out. Now to get started on our awesome OTIF news. So we're going to be talking to our Q&A panels today, and they're going to answer some questions that we have and give us some insights into best practices that we can consider while we're facing these new standards for OTIF. So to start us off, what are some important dates for us to keep in mind? Back in September, on September 1st, Walmart actually announced changes to its on-time in full program that would go into effect on September 15th. So we've had about 2 weeks to adjust to these new changes, these new goals, and now we're all kind of wondering what they are, what it is, and what we can do about these new goals. So what is OTIF? Well, OTIF can really be broken down into 2 separate metrics, on time and in full, which is where we get that lovely acronym for OTIF. So on time is saying that I will get my orders to Walmart within the window that they have set, and then it can be further broken down into 2 separate ways of transportation, either prepaid, which is that I, the supplier, will take on the responsibility and cost of the transportation to get Walmart the orders they requested delivered to their distribution center. Or there's collect, which is where Walmart takes on the cost of transportation, and I am only responsible for getting my orders ready in time to be picked up from my warehouse. Then we have the second part of OTIF, which is in full, which means that I need to get all of the cases which Walmart ordered to Walmart without any of them missing. So what does this mean for suppliers? If some of you are aware of the previous goals, that there's no longer this blended goal for prepaid, mixed full truckload, and less than truckload. It's regardless of how you ship your products, the on-time goal is 98% across the board. And that's the same for in full percentages. It's a pretty sharp increase for suppliers, and it can have some pretty drastic consequences because of the cost. So for orders that fall outside of this goal, Walmart will actually charge the supplier 3% of the cost of goods sold for non-compliant cases, which can really add up to thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars every month. So now what you have all been waiting for, let's get some of these questions answered and introduce our panelists. So today we have Taylor Stewart, who's the Vice President of Operations for Island Ventures, a local venture capital firm with a multifaceted team that brings decades of experience across numerous categories and business types. Taylor is a proven operator in the PE arena with a demonstrated history of working in the consumer goods industry. He also has experience, fun fact, as a professional aviator with multiple roles held within corporate aviation. Next, we have Colby Bieland, who joined KStack in August of 2010 as the company's Vice President of Sales and Marketing. In December of 2018, KStack was actually acquired by Hub Group, and he is now the Vice President of Corporate Sales Solutions at Hub Group. Colby holds a BS/BA degree in supply chain management from the Walton College of Business and has spent the last 26 years working in multiple facets of the supply chain with extensive knowledge in retail logistics, warehousing, international shipping, freight consolidation, and so much more. Mr. Bieland is a board member for the University of Arkansas Supply Chain Management Research Center and sits on many local boards, in addition to be actively involved with coaching youth football, basketball, and baseball travel teams. Next, we have Stacy Tan, who leads the customer development for SupplyPike, a supply chain software solutions company in Northwest Arkansas, who is focused on helping CPGs increase their retail intelligence and profitability. Her passion is to help suppliers better understand their business. Stacy has over 10 years of experience in the retail industry, with experience in sales, account management, replenishment, and supply chain. Last but not least, we have Ryan Petty, who manages Otif, SupplyPike's Otif Radar application, a product built to help suppliers isolate poor performance in their supply chain and resolve issues before it impacts the bottom line. He is responsible for the product direction, strategy, and research of Otif Radar and enjoys engaging with real people while focusing on solving real problems for their company and industry. So guys, if you wouldn't mind showing us your lovely faces, panelists. Hello, hello. There they are. Hi, everyone. How's it going? Can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Perfect. That's awesome. There we go. We got everyone. All right. So we're going to start this out with kind of a easy question, and I'm going to direct it to most of you guys. So if you wouldn't mind sharing what your experience is with OTIF and compliance programs in general, we'd love to hear more from you on some insights that you have around OTIF. Stacy, if you wouldn't mind starting for us.
Yeah, definitely. So thanks, Melody, and thanks everybody for having me. Super excited to be here and chat OTIF on a beautiful Wednesday morning. So yeah, as far as my experience with OTIF and kind of compliance programs go at Walmart, like Melody mentioned, I have been, like I'm sure many of us, in the supplier community for a long time, pretty much since I graduated from the University of Arkansas. So most of my career before joining SupplyPike, I worked for different broker and representative firms in the area. And so I have kind of been on the supplier side of OTIF for a long time. So was there when it got introduced, and had to work with my supplier teams on kind of navigating what all the goals meant, figuring out how to make sure that we were delivering our products on time and in full, and basically kind of ticking all the boxes that Walmart and Sam's Club had with regards to these compliance programs. And like Melody said, I've been with SupplyPike for a little over a year now. And so I've kind of taken, still dealing with OTIF, but kind of the other side of the coin, where now I work with my supplier partners to really try and help them navigate some of these changes. So figuring out how they can use their data, how they can use SupplyPike as an example, to understand what their compliance is, how they are going to be impacted, whether it be in terms of fines or navigating buyer relationships, or even how that will impact their future business, what they can do to either avoid or maybe even waive fines, and even talk with them about what their best practices are. So kind of been able to see both sides of the coin for OTIF so far. It's been really interesting.
That's great. We're excited to hear more about what your experience and what you can do, or the suggestions that you have for suppliers. Brian, if you wouldn't mind kind of elaborating about your experience as well.
Yeah, so happy to join everyone and talk OTIF. So my background in the last 5 years or so has been on actually developing a transportation management system for 3PLs. And so this has given me some experience into over-the-road freight, including LTL and FTL and delivery requirements and sort of monitoring performance. And so that's been a lot of my experience, but in the last 2 years, I've moved into the fun world of OTIF and all of its compliance rules. And so I've really been diving into Walmart's OTIF program, working with suppliers to understand the specific challenges that they have meeting those requirements. And it's really great because I think that, OTIF, you've got to take it on at sort of a high level to focus on the big picture, but at the same time, the compliance program can be detailed, and there's nuances in those. And so you sort of have to traverse the big picture, but then be able to get down into the weeds to understand what's going on. And so that's been fun helping suppliers sort of deal with that and hopefully avoid those negative outcomes at the end of the day.
That's great. Well, we're excited to learn more, and we're going to hand it off to our next panelist, Colby, if you wouldn't mind elaborating kind of on your experience with OTIF.
Sure. Like mentioned earlier, I've been in the supply chain industry for the last 26 years, working for every mode of transportation in the industry. And about 10 years ago, when I started working at KStack, KStack is focused on retail consolidation. Some of their flagship programs are Walmart and Sam's Club, but in addition, they do Target and Kroger and Amazon and Publix and Weiss and H-E-B and other retailers as well. But specifically to Walmart and Sam's Club, you know, before OTIF was supply chain reliability. And so KStack has been focused on meeting Walmart's vendor compliance metrics, going back to supply chain reliability, and even before that to current date. So in 2016, before Walmart announced OTIF, KStack has a very large office here in Northwest Arkansas. And because we've been a partner with Walmart for so many years, they asked us to come up to the corporate office and start having meetings about OTIF. They have a group called their Flow Team at Walmart. And we started working with the Flow Team members to understand if OTIF, you know, how OTIF might impact the supply chain, the costs. And so when OTIF was announced in 2017, KStack was aware of that announcement before it was ever made. And we had worked on developing technology solutions and business processes that would allow our customers to be in compliance with Walmart's vendor compliance metrics since then. And so for the last three years of OTIF, we have been working with both suppliers and Walmart to develop solutions. And now that Walmart has gone from 80% at the beginning of this year for an LTL supplier to 98%, ensuring that we have the processes and the systems in place to allow suppliers to deliver to Walmart on time and in full at 98% plus.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, we're so excited to learn from you guys. So another question, open to anyone, any of the panelists, if you would like to answer, is how do you think OTIF helps suppliers? So how does it actually make the supplier experience better or help them in general?
I'll take this one. You know, any goal, any increased bar is going to push teams both internally and externally to work together to meet a need and an expectation. If a supplier can meet that need and expectation consistently, you're setting the stage with your buyers and retailers to potentially be asked to produce more with expansion, to produce different things that you haven't thought about before. But it's setting the stage to set yourself apart, especially in the short term with the issues that we've been hearing about. The innovation that can be driven out of this within the supply chain teams are with the right people, are solution-driven powerhouses. And those teams to work and solve and mitigate that risk. If you finally run out of road, pivot and bring in a diverse team throughout the company with varying backgrounds and create a solution that meets it, because the piece of the pie that you want is to get more product on a shelf. And if you can meet this goal because of the magnifying glass that's on it right now, the next 2 and 3 years are big for that.
Yeah, I would like to add to that, actually. Very great point and spot on for sure. And the other piece of that is for the supplier that is able to comply, right, to meet the expectation. And it's going to take a lot of collaboration and a lot of innovation internally to get to 98%. 98% is not an easy goal for any supplier, but the suppliers that are taking their head and sticking it down in the sand and acting like 98% doesn't exist and Walmart's not going to hold them accountable and it's not real, versus a supplier that goes, oh my gosh, we've got to figure this out and let's get on it. It's going to help you grow your business, right? I mean, the ones that actually accomplish the goal or do what they can to meet it, it helps them grow their business, because it is, to Taylor's point, I mean, you are the supplier. When you come to a line review meeting and they're reviewing the category, the suppliers that are closest to 98% or above 98% are the suppliers that are going to get more points of distribution from Walmart, more SKUs, more stores, whatever it is. And so we're hearing a lot of suppliers say, this is not fair, this doesn't make sense. And they're just kind of sticking their head in the sand and trying to ignore it and hope that it doesn't come. But it's here. And I heard Walmart say just last week, 100% is really the expectation. So, or that's the goal that they're going to work towards long term. It's not just 98. They're going to go to 100. So, to Taylor's point, the people that are innovating, the people that are improving their business processes, the people that are investing in resources and technology and people to achieve this goal, it doesn't only make their organization better, it's going to make their sales grow across the entire organization, all retailers. Because if you can do this for Walmart, then you can do this for all other retailers. And most likely other retailers are going to, have similar goals if they don't already.
I like what you both have said about how not only improving, getting close to your OTIF goals, there's going to be less fines, but it's also going to get you more distribution. So it's kind of a win-win solution if you're able to actually do that innovation and collaboration and work towards those goals. So I'm going to move on to the next question, which is what issues do strict OTIF goals cause suppliers? So we went over the pros. What are the cons for these new goals?
This is a new exposure on a P&L that has always existed, regardless if it's been Walmart, CVS, Rite Aid, Walgreens, for quite some time based on vendor agreements. But that exposure has been somewhat minimal, and you can manage and you can move things to make it balance out at the end of the day. This is now a glaring drain on a P&L if you can't change and can't meet the expectations. So I'm sure there's people having some very, very direct conversations about how we're going to mitigate this. The other piece is margin on prepaid shipments. So if you're a prepaid supplier and you're handling your own logistics, not through a 3PL, potentially in the short and long term, that margin that you're making on freight sometimes, and sometimes you're not, at the end of the year, it may not balance out to be that little bit of a nugget that you have at the end of the day. So there's going to be some departments that are missing that extra bump.
I know that Ryan or Stacy could definitely elaborate on that, but I know that we've definitely seen this as well in Supply Pike. So if Ryan or Stacy, would you like to kind of elaborate on?
Yeah, definitely. So, I kind of totally agree with what Taylor's saying from a supplier perspective. Just suddenly we, with the 3% fine for cost of goods, which has always been there, but obviously with the thresholds going up, now suddenly it's that much more of a potential issue for a lot of suppliers. I think, not only from a fine perspective, but even just having more difficult supply chain discussions with buyers is something that we've seen a lot of our supplier partners kind of have to deal with and go through and actually start to plan for, especially as we go into Q4 holiday season. It's going to be a really, really busy time for a lot of people. I think it's no secret that with the global pandemic that we are in right now, it's very, very constricted supply chain that everyone is having to deal with, shortage of drivers. So, more compressed and kind of expensive freight that people are having to deal with, shortage of DC workers. So a lot of times we're hearing now, kind of trailers are getting dropped in the yard and maybe not getting unloaded as quickly as they used to. And even just the plain and basic fact that we're having manufacturing shortages from China. People aren't able to import and get their products in on time. So you kind of couple that with, kind of all these supply chain issues, add things like panic buying. And again, we're going into Q4, AKA holiday season. I think kind of the bottom line, and again, not a really big secret, is that it's just going to get harder to get goods on time and in full to any retailer, not just Walmart. So I think, kind of again, echoing what Taylor said, fines are going to be a big deal, I think, over the next couple of months as people try and sort this out and figure it out. It's going to be interesting to see, especially for some of the departments that we've seen where, they're having suppressed sales because of the pandemic, and how does this now fine that is added on top of that affect their business as well. So it's going to be a very interesting next couple of months, I think.
we're interested to see how this truly does impact suppliers. Well, so next, now that the score is the same kind of across the board, what do you think is more important, on time or in full?
Is this a trick question, Melody?
Yes.
These are the questions people want to know.
I'll start on this one. Specific to Walmart and Sam's Club, the just-in-time model that Walmart uses doesn't allow us as suppliers to choose which one is more important. When you take into account replenishment, logistics, warehousing, and all of the AI systems that Walmart has invested 20 years in and are rolling out really in the past 12 months, they're black and white. They react to POS changes against forecast, and they consider warehouse and logistic assets and availability to formulate exactly what the retailer needs and how much they need and when. You can dive into certain suppliers are co-managed, and you can ebb and flow with that a little bit to go, hey, I think this might be off a little bit. Maybe you don't need that much, and we can send it to you next week or tomorrow, something of that aspect. So you run into order smoothing and various aspects that you can work with replenishment managers, demand managers on, but both are equally as important. And I think that's part of why they set the stage of 98%, 98%. They don't want you to just fill the product. They want it when they want it, and they want it in full.
Yeah, so I agree with that, Taylor. And the interesting thing is, for food and beverage category, it was already 98%, the in full metric, right? So them taking on time to 98% to back up what you were saying is, I think on time became extremely important on September the 15th. They're both equally as important, but the suppliers were doing a fairly respectable job of getting the in full portion right, but they weren't, because the thresholds were so low, they weren't really changing their supply chains or improving their supply chains to drive the on time up. Walmart needed the on time to be there as well. So I agree that both of them are equally important, and you can't really decipher, but I think Walmart basically said with this announcement, on time is just as important as in full. So right now, on time for the suppliers that are behind, on time is important right now, like until everything catches up, until the constraints in the supply chain that Stacy was talking about normalize a little bit. So on time is extremely important right now. And I don't think suppliers understand, based upon the conversation I've been having with them, they don't understand the drastic change in a 98% on time requirement in a prepaid model for a supplier. So right now, I think in the short term, on time is extremely important.
Yeah, and just to echo that too, I mean, really from a OTIF compliance program perspective, both on time and in full have equal fines. So, you're going to get dinged the same amount for either sort of failure. So at least from the compliance perspective, they're really on the same footing.
Well, we are now right at the time where we promised a live Q&A with questions from the audience, and we've actually gotten quite a few really good questions, so I want to make sure that we have enough time to get to those. The first one that we're going to address is how do we dispute a late shipment when the DC is at capacity and we can't secure the delivery appointment by the MABD due to the DC not having any open delivery appointments available? That was a lot. I can break it down for you guys again, but if anyone wants to take the first stab at it.
Could the person that asked that question confirm if they're prepaid, and if they're prepaid LTL or full truckload supplier? Because that changes the answer a little bit, actually, based upon mode of transportation.
Yeah, and maybe if while they're typing that out, I would just say too that generally Walmart's documentation states Otifines cannot be disputed according to their official docs. So If you try to seek relief for sort of that overall monthly OTIF fine, it's definitely an uphill battle, considering that, you know, officially you cannot dispute it. We have heard from some suppliers who've had success at pleading sort of special cases through their buyers for sort of extenuating circumstances. But usually when those conversations happen, they're not necessarily looking to debate about individual POs. They want to understand what happened for the entire month, and, you know, why should you be able to make this case to have that fine waived. So that's some general basics with OTIF. I don't know if we have an answer on the LTL or FTL.
So the person responded that they are prepaid.
Well, if they're prepaid LTL, the biggest challenge in the LTL model is an LTL carrier does not schedule a delivery appointment until the freight arrives at the delivering terminal. So if you're shipping from the East Coast to the West Coast, let's just say North Carolina, and it's going to Red Bluff terminal, and it arrives at Red Bluff today, and the LTL carrier goes in to schedule the appointment for tomorrow, because that's when they're going to deliver, and there are no appointments available in the system, there's nothing that you can do as a supplier to change that, right? Because the LTL carrier is not going to schedule the appointment until it arrives at the delivering terminal. That is the challenge of the mode of LTL. An advantage of consolidation, of retail consolidation, like KSAC does for Walmart, is we guarantee the delivery appointment because we schedule the appointment the day that the order's written. So if the order is written on today, Wednesday, we know what our lead time is in that lane. We have a set lead time in all 42 lanes, and we are able to go in today and schedule the appointment for every single PO that is written. So one of the other things that LTL carriers do is, let's say you have a type 20 and a type 33 destined to Red Bluff. They will go in and they'll schedule the appointment on the type 20 or the type 33, whichever is first available to them. They will schedule that PO in the system, and the other PO doesn't get scheduled. And then when they go to deliver it, Walmart doesn't have anything to receive against in the system. They don't have that PO to receive against. And that's what creates a lot of the shortage issues that suppliers experience at Walmart. So not only did 98% on time become an extreme challenge just from an on-time perspective, the way that LTL freight moves, if you're a prepaid supplier, there's not an LTL carrier in North America, and I can say that because I worked for two of the largest for 20 years, or just short of 20 years. You know, the two largest ones in the industry, they're not going to change their model, the way they move freight for one retailer. And so it just creates challenges if you're a prepaid LTL supplier to Walmart.
Yeah. Well, so this is a question, moving on to the next question. I see a couple of people asking about it. So to summarize, for collect vendors, most of the time, it seems like they fall under that 98% accountability because Walmart is not receiving the shipments on time. So what is Walmart going to be doing for collect suppliers to get their on-time metrics corrected? Or how can collect suppliers improve their in-stocks because of late deliveries?
I'll give you my opinion. The people that utilize the collect program, it's great from a P&L perspective, right? You don't have a balance sheet or a line item for freight cost, and that looks really good on the P&L, but your buyer's holding you accountable to the category and to that 98% OTIF. Right? That's how they're viewing you when they look at the category and all the other suppliers. They're looking to see who's performing. And Walmart Collect has historically been in the mid 50s to 60% on time. And it's because of the way freight moves in the Walmart network. It is a backhaul program when freight is available. So if it's just for simple math, you have one pallet to 42 DCs. And so you say my freight's ready, like you go in the system and you say my freight's ready for pickup, and you're 98%, you do everything that you're supposed to do, and Walmart comes in to pick it up, and on that backhaul truck they only have 10 pallet positions. So they pick up 10 pallets and there's 32 sitting on the dock. If they come in tomorrow and they just say they're lucky and they're able to get all 32 the next day, you still have a 2-day window. There's a high probability that some of those pallets are going to be late, which creates, and that's not going to change. I mean, that's the problem with collect, is it's not going to change, which is why the accountability bucket is really, did you have it ready for pickup on time? Because that's the only thing, if Walmart's going to take accountability, that they can do. So collect suppliers are challenged. It's great from a P&L standpoint, but from an on-time performance standpoint, for the suppliers that are taking control of their supply chains and their business, and they're trying to figure out how to be compliant so they can get more points of distribution, so they can be the category leader, whatever that they want to do. Even if the buyer tells you, we want to go collect, right? And you will hear that, we want you to go collect. That's what Walmart wants, because it benefits Walmart financially to keep their trucks full if it's a good fit. But if the buyer's holding you accountable in the line review for your performance, at what point do you decide, how am I going to grow my business, and how do I take control of my business? That's the challenge with Walmart Collect, in my opinion.
Yeah, and maybe, sorry, I was just going to say, and I think the pro side of collect, and those cons are absolutely correct, what Colby mentioned. You know, the pro side is you do avoid more of the compliance requirements. You've just got to ensure the product is ready at the ship point, which is typically easier to manage than getting that truck to the DC on the right date. So it may help you from a fine perspective, but there are definitely other factors in that equation to consider. Sorry, Melody, I cut you off there.
No, you're good. I'm reading through the questions. So another question that we have is, are there suppliers that are currently hitting the 98% OTIF goal? Have you guys seen that?
Our company is. It took a lot of work over many years to do that. From an in full standpoint, our largest company does eggs for Walmart, CCF Brands. And we don't have a choice. It's a commodity. The government, not just Walmart, requires eggs to be on the shelf. So we've always had internal thresholds, even before there's always been a replenishment standard. Then it moved to an OTIF standard. We've always done that. The on-time piece is the largest hurdle for us to really get to 98% consistently. Can we hit it most of the time? Absolutely. Can we hit it during holiday when AIS is moving things and we're on set lead times and there's only so many eggs that come out of a chicken per week? That, you know, we have those things to balance, and we have to come up with ways to do that. But our other companies that we have, we're hitting that, but we've taken control of our supply chain. We try not to use 3PLs when we don't have to. Sometimes it makes sense for LTL routing and various aspects of branded products, but we've taken control of the supply chain. We set expectations on the prepaid and the collect side with both the customers and our carriers, whether we own the asset or we don't. And I think a lot of the OTIF piece can come down to, and I'm elaborating a little bit outside of the question here, but it's how much control do you want to have over it to be able to meet the goal. So you have to start justifying some cost. Do you want to take the 3% ding, or do you want to go invest and you haul it yourself because you know that Joe is going to always have it there when the MABD says it on the PO?
Yeah, I was just going to echo what Taylor said, just in terms of, are there suppliers that are hitting 98%? Yes, we work with suppliers that do. They did it before the 98% goal came into place, and they're continuing to do it now. Obviously, you know, as Taylor said, the challenge is consistency, making sure they're able to hit it every single month, and during crunch times, in the middle, like we said, of a global pandemic, or when your sales need to spike, or when you're about to go into holiday season. But I guess the point is, it's doable. Definitely difficult, but doable. And, you know, just to kind of add on to that and tack on to what Colby was saying, the suppliers that we do have that are hitting those goals are prepaid, just because, again, like what Taylor and Colby were saying, it's when you have a little bit more control over your supply chain, you know, there are certain strings that you can pull, and there are certain levers that you can push, to make sure that you are hitting those goals.
I'll add one more thing to that. Part of our partnership with SupplyPike specifically has been the analysis and being able to do deep dives. You know, some of our businesses get a few POs a week. Some of our businesses get 50 plus POs per day, 365 days a year. And being able to use the SupplyPike OTIF analysis tools allows us to find our problems quickly, identify them, put a solution in place, and move on. Some of those are easy fixes, and the majority are longer term. Put something in place. If it doesn't work, we try something else. But being able to hit that 98% goal, no, it's not easy for anybody. But having somebody focused on where the problem areas are how you're going to get there.
At KStack, we have been in compliance with Walmart since supply chain reliability, as I mentioned earlier. So, as you know, the shocker to us was within the same calendar year and with only a 2-week notice, the jump for an LTL supplier from 80 to 98% within the same calendar year with no real notice. I mean, if you think about most LTL suppliers, they have about a 14-day lead time in retailing, somewhere in there, 13 to 15-day lead time for most LTL suppliers. So the announcement was made on September 1st with POs that are written on September the 15th. Literally the day that the announcement was made, there were POs that were impacted by the announcement, right? So the very first week, September 15th deliveries, KStack was above 98% on time across all of our vendor pools. So we can do it. We can execute to it. So if we can do it, other suppliers can do it, whether they take control of it themselves internally or if they want to outsource it to a company like KStack. But to Taylor's point, there are things that impact the supply chain, and especially to Stacy's point earlier, there's so many things happening right now in addition to OTIF, right? I mean, the pandemic has impacted the supply chain and put constraints in the supply chain globally, not just domestically. So if you're, manufacturing, you're importing products, or whether it's raw materials or finished goods, you have supply chain constraints that are making it a challenge. Forget the back end, delivering from your DC to Walmart, it's on the front end too. And it's impacting your ability to hit the fill rate or to hit the on-time rate or both. So you really have to right now understand that 98% is a high goal to hit. It is possible, but as we get into peak season and as we get into the potential, as we're seeing right now, I mean, the White House was even impacted with COVID. As COVID potentially has another run in the U.S., there's no telling what type of constraints are going to be impacted on the supply chain. The interesting thing to me was on August the 17th, Walmart sent out a memo to the suppliers saying there were exceptions for COVID. And that they had an exception from March until August for COVID. Like that, most suppliers were able to get an exception if they weren't hitting their OTIF goals. Well, that went away August 17th. And then on September 1st, the announcement came out of 98% OTIF. So, read between the lines, but the challenge for the suppliers right now, they're unprecedented, right? I mean, you're dealing with production issues, inventory issues, supply chain issues, supply chain cost issues, and then you have to deal with this new 98% OTIF goals, right? And so your head is probably spinning, like, how do I get a control of this, or what do I do, or what can I do? And don't stick your head in or wave the white flag and give up. There are solutions out there that can help you.
Yeah, and
That's,
I wanted to.
I hate to cut you off, Ryan, but we're going to move on to the next question. I apologize. I have to be the bad guy here. We're getting tons of questions coming in. There's a few of them that are actually on Otifines. So one is, how are Otifines and deductions related? And along those lines, how are you actually able, I know that we mentioned earlier that people will sometimes actually dispute Otifines, but could you guys kind of explain that process and the success that some people have found in that? So the first question, just to go back, is how are Otifines and deduction fines related?
Yeah, so this is pretty common that we get because Walmart has multiple ways of sort of clawing money out of your hands. And so you can have what Walmart calls AP deductions. And so that is when they deduct a compliance type issue from a check that they're paying you. And so they'll deduct that from a check, and that's an AP deduction. And they do have a process to dispute those AP deductions through the Direct Commerce app. And so that is something that you can dispute, and they kind of tell you what kind of documentation and evidence you need and what the process is. OTIF, on the other hand, is an AR fine. It's actually a bill or an invoice that they send you that's payable to them. And so it's a different type of sort of chargeback. And typically AR fines are disputed in something called high radius. However, again, according to their documentation, you officially cannot dispute OTIF. And so if you go through sort of the default system of disputing AR fines, you probably will not be successful at that. Where we have seen a bit of success in disputing OTIF is communicating with your buyer, being very proactive in terms of communicating issues as soon as they start happening, what you're doing to address those issues, and then trying to kind of make a case to see if you can get those fines waived, even potentially before they issue the fines. OTIF fines are generally released 4 to 8 weeks after a month ends. So you do have some time once your score is sort of final before that fine gets issued. And that's really the window that we've seen where some suppliers have had some success at communicating their case and getting the fines waived. But Walmart doesn't make it easy, and they sort of deter you from even trying.
And so how would a supplier go about getting those fines waived? And Stacey, feel free to jump in as well. I saw that you had some.
Yeah, I was just going to tack on really quickly to what Ryan said, just kind of as he separated out the OTIF and the deductions fines. What can be a little bit scary is that Walmart can actually kind of double dip almost with those related fines. So let's just, say they've ordered 100 and, we talked about, hey, Walmart is having some issues with getting them in on time. If your product lands, but let's just say Walmart is still saying, hey, I've not gotten the product yet. They'll kind of hit you with one deduction to say, hey, I ordered 100 and I received 0, even though you may have shipped 100. So that's kind of one ding. So you get the deduction, the AP deduction, like Ryan was talking about. And then kind of in addition to that, you will also get hit with an OTIF fine because then Walmart is saying, hey, again, I want that 3% cost of goods sold on the non-compliant cases. So that's kind of compounded and gotten a little bit scarier again as the fines have increased. So just one thing to keep in mind as suppliers are thinking about fines related to on time and in full. And then kind of to your point, Melody, again, like Ryan was mentioning, there is no formal way truly to dispute OTIF fines. But one of the things that our team does is we work with our suppliers again to try and help piece together data and work on a way to communicate with buyers and try to get those fines waived.
So we've seen the most success, like Ryan said, just being proactive in letting your buyers and replenishment teams know if you have any anticipated issues. And then really at the end of the day, it's just gathering proof. Unfortunately, it is a little bit of he said, she said. So just making sure that you are documenting everything, having your BOLs, your PODs available, so that when you do want to go plead your case with the buyer, you're able to say, hey, I've communicated with you guys from the beginning. I have all this documentation available. Please help and work together with me because ABC, and I shouldn't get fined because of XYZ. So obviously, as I'm sure every supplier knows, your mileage may vary depending on which buying team you have, which replenishment team you have. But again, just best practice is document everything so that, if you ever do get hit with a fine, it's something that you can put together really quickly and have kind of a comprehensive case rather than having to, now try and dig and look for files and things like that and fight the fine after.
Melody, I'd like to close that one out. Stacy's absolutely right. We have had success in multiple categories fighting OTIF fines, and it's because we're buttoned up and we have a list. It's a program. We've had the program even before the goals that have existed since 2018 that are fairly high. PODs, BOLs, sign in and out sheets for collect. We get deductions because a collect driver will log in and say, yeah, that product wasn't ready. Yes, it was. You just got there late because you were late on your appointment. Collect carriers they're under scrutiny and under programs as well. They're getting fines now. So they're going to do everything they can, and it's going to be a finger pointing game. So be buttoned up with sign in and out sheets, PODs, BOLs, original EDI 850s with your POs, any kind of documentation between a replenishment manager. And the other piece is there's a calendar that was released by Walmart that says, here's when you're going to receive your fine within the SPM dashboard. Don't talk to the buyer when that fine's released. Be ahead of it. Know your issues that were true issues. If you didn't know you had an issue until there, I think the empathy and sympathy button is not going to get pressed. Be proactive and talk to the buyer before you get a fine because they have the ability to waive fines, and they are the only ones that have the ability. We found out multiple things through companies such as Unilever of how to fight things and doing it the right way. I would also suggest don't finger point. Try to say if there really was an issue, whether it's, hey, you missed your demand planner, what's going on with this? The forecast said X, I produced X, and you guys are 35% above orders. They needed the product. That's why it ordered. If they didn't need the product, call it out to your replenishment manager at that time, fix it. There's ways to cancel POs out of the system, whether you're co-managed or not. The new Nova that just got released past couple weeks. There's ways to do this to mitigate true issues. And that's where Walmart's sympathy button is not going to get pressed. They have the tools to go do that. You have to be proactive, be in the business. You have to be in the weeds to a certain extent and have processes set up to move through and stay ahead.
I think that's great.
I just add real quick as a logistics provider, you need a logistics provider that can give you the BOL, the gate stamp, which is going to stop the clock on time, and a POD. So you need to have whoever you're using, your logistics provider needs to be able to easily provide you with a copy of the BOL, a copy of the gate stamp, and a copy of the POD.
EDI carrier. One last question for all of you guys before we wrap this up. And everyone, participants, please don't drop off at the end. We have some good information of what we're going to be sending you after this panel. But last question for all of our panelists is, what changes in the supply chain industry relating to carriers and warehouses? And we've even seen some questions around for manufacturers. Can we expect to see over the next few months because of this OTIF change? So kind of looking forward, what changes are you guys predicting because of this announcement?
I would say that cost is going to come into play at some point. With capacity where it is, Stacy mentioned earlier, driver shortage. Driver shortage is impacting capacity in a major way right now. There's a projection of 100,000 driver shortage, 100,000 drivers short right now in the marketplace. And then you have retailers that are utilizing carriers' assets, i.e. their trailers, as short-term storage on the yard to ensure that they have enough inventory for peak that other retailers aren't buying the product. So you've got retailers that are hoarding carriers' assets, taking capacity out of the market, and you have a driver shortage. So it is a carrier's market as it is right now, whether it be coming from overseas. You know, if you're importing from overseas, we've seen container rates up $2,500 in some lanes just in the last couple of months. To domestically, whether it be intermodal or truckload or LTL, we're seeing rates, and even parcel, we're seeing rates increase rapidly. So at some point that filters to the supplier's cost, right? So we're in budget season right now. Typically September, October, November is budget season for most suppliers. And in addition to understanding the impact of the compliance penalties, you also probably need to be understanding that there's likely going to be supply chain costs that are increasing as we enter 2021.
I'll add on to that. To meet OTIF standards, the costing is gonna be your biggest one. You need to invest in more warehousing, whether that's taking a trailer asset and storing it on there because you don't know how temporary it can be. Everybody's agreement with Walmart and all the other retailers can be different. You never know when somebody else comes in with a better price, better service. So it's maybe don't go build a warehouse, rent one, use assets, but at the same time, use those pieces as leverage to go get a commitment from a Walmart and say, I can do this. I can produce this private label and this branded product. But I need a 3-year commitment. I need a 5-year commitment. Historically, Walmart has been one that wants shorter term commitments because they're focused on EDLP, EDLC. Look for something that can grow on costing, whether it's cost plus models. We deal in commodities. We deal in cost plus modeling. Whether it's a fixed price with tiered structure of natural disaster, whatever have you. Work on a commitment to leverage. It's good for your P&L, it's good for your business, but it also sets the tone for being able to comply with all of these programs. And Walmart's not going to be the only one that does these programs. We do business with CVS and Rite Aid. There is absolutely no fighting OTIF fines. If you're late, you may or may not get paid on that PO. These are going to be things that are going to be more consistent. Target's new OTIF program that we've heard rumors about. That's going to be a fun one. So if you do business with Target, good luck. Just try to look ahead and leverage this in some positive light.
Yeah, I would agree with what, just kind of calling back to what Colby was saying at the beginning, which is, it's kind of hardcore, but I mean, he's right. We can't stick our heads in the sand. These OTIF goals are not going away. And as Taylor was mentioning, in fact, we expect that a lot of retailers are probably going to be following suit. If they see that Walmart can do it and suppliers are going to kind of have to comply, then we expect that they'll be following suit and doing the same thing. And so just kind of looking ahead, kind of summarizing, I guess, our whole discussion today, which is, really try to get the finger on the pulse of your business, really get buttoned up, really understand where, inefficiencies and gaps are with your business, improve communications with your buyers and replenishment teams and planners to see how you can try. It's going to be hard, I won't lie, but how you can squeeze some inefficiencies out of their side as well. And, hopefully the goal is that, this is better for everybody, just improves on-shelf availability, improves in-stock, just makes the buying experience better for Walmart customers. And fingers crossed that 2021 sees all of that come to pass.
I just wanted to wrap up with, I watched my nephew play 7- and 8-year-old baseball last night, and I think there's a metaphor there of, these kids are learning to just play the game of baseball. They're learning to swing a bat and catch a ball and throw it accurately. they're also learning the rules of baseball at the same time. And sometimes you see great performance or great, dive or hit or tag, and but they don't understand the rules, and so the player's safe or something like that. And so, if you've got to understand the rules of OTIF, or you're spinning your wheels and not going to be successful at that. But at the same time, then you've got to also work on the execution of it as well. So I hope to see a lot of suppliers collaborating with multiple teams to understand the rules and understand how they're going to meet those in a diverse set of departments.
Great. And that actually is a great ending to our OTIF panel. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Supplier Community, for hosting us. We will be sending out some information, recording after this event. We actually have built a ebook on OTIF that all of the attendees who have attended today will get first access to, that kind of goes over a lot of the stuff that a lot of the team here explained. There were over 20 something questions that were submitted. I think it's actually closer to 30 now. So what we'll do is we'll take these questions that we were unable to answer and try to get back to all of the attendees with a little FAQ, additional FAQ. But just wanted to thank everyone for joining us today, and I hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday. And thank you, panelists, for taking the time out of your day to answer these questions. We really, really appreciate it. I hope everyone has a great rest of their Wednesday, and we're logging off.